a song, and it said, "We have this moment to hold in our hands and to touch as it slips through our fingers like sand. Yesterday's gone, tomorrow may never come, but we have this moment today." And I want to talk this afternoon, just for a brief moment, about golden moments. And a golden moment recorded in Matthew 14:22 through 20. It says this. Jesus is walking on the water. It says, "Right away, Jesus made his disciples get into a boat and start back across the lake. But he stayed until he had sent the crowds away. And when he went up on the mountain where he could be alone and pray, later that evening, he was still there. By this time, the boat was a long way from the shore. It was going against the wind and was being tossed around by the waves. A little while before morning, Jesus came walking on the water toward the disciples, and when they saw him, they thought he was a ghost. They were terrified, and they started screaming. At once Jesus said to them, 'Don't worry, I'm Jesus. Don't be afraid.' Peter replied, 'Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you in the water.' 'Come on,' Jesus said. Peter then got out of the boat and he started walking on the water towards him. But when Peter saw how strong the wind was, he was afraid and he started sinking. He said, 'Save me, Lord!' he shouted. Right away, Jesus reached out his hand. He helped Peter up and said, 'You surely don't have much faith. Why do you doubt?' Jesus and Peter get into the boat, the wind died down, and the men in the boat worshipped Jesus and said, 'You really are the Son of God.' I often wondered why they didn't recognize Jesus. They had just been with him. He had fed the 5,000. But they didn't recognize him. His customized divine intervention into their storm because they were preoccupied with the storm, the circumstances of their lives. And many times we become so taken up and distracted by the circumstances of our lives that we fail to recognize the golden moments in life. How many of you have ever been in a boat in a storm? You can raise your hand if you have. Yeah, it's not fun. I mean, the fishermen will say, "Oh, if you're seasick, just grab a handful of that salt water and drink it and it'll make you better." While you're green around the gills, you go, "Yeah, right." I can remember one time I was going to Newfoundland. It was in January, and the boat trip to Port aux Basques from Cape Breton was normally 8 hours. This time it took 24 hours. The winds were over 100 miles an hour. The waves looked like mountains. It was so rough that they had to drop anchor 25 miles off the coast of Port aux Basques. The time we got there, I didn't just want to kiss the rock, I wanted to lick it. I'm telling you, nobody likes a storm. We're people who like to be entertained. And we find ourselves a lot of time wishing that the circumstances were so different in our lives. And we're so involved sometimes in trying to make our circumstances just perfect that we fail to recognize the golden moments of the now. How many times have you ever said, "Oh, I hate my job. I wish I had another job"? And I say, you know what? You should be thankful that you have a job, because there are people that wishing that they did have a job and they don't have one. Or how many times when you had, that newborn baby comes home from the hospital and without any regard for your sleep deprivation, you have to get up and feed that baby in the middle of the night. And you think, oh. And I say to parents, you know what? That's a golden moment. When you're cradling that baby in your arm in the middle of the night and nobody to bother you, you're bonding with this gift that God has blessed you with. Enjoy it. Look at it as a golden moment rather than a moment of sleep deprivation. And you know those 2-year-olds, those terrible twos, you know what? When they're 2 years old, they think you're perfect. Milk it for all you're worth. Because they're going to turn 10 and think you know absolutely nothing. You know those moments when we share with one another, our spouses or our brothers and sisters, and we get to walk with them or play with them. Those are golden moments. Because someday they won't be there to play with you. Or they won't be able to walk around the block with you. And you're saying, you know what? We wish for better times. And we fail to recognize the golden moments in the day. My wife and I have determined that we're going to look for the golden moments. That's why we start every day with, this is the day the Lord has made. We're going to rejoice and we're going to be glad in it. And you look for the golden moments. When my son was an adolescent, you know, the older I get, the earlier I wake up in the morning. Anybody else have that? I used to fantasize, but when I become older, I'm going to sleep till 10, 11, 12 o'clock. If I get 5, 6 hours in, I celebrate it. I woke one morning and I said to my wife, I wonder if the neighbors will mind if I cut the grass. It's 6 o'clock. She said, I think they would mind. Well, that's usually on Saturday mornings, our date time, and so I said to my adolescent, I want you to get up and I want you to cut the grass. And I want you to do the whippersnipping. Now, you had to be very specific with him. I remember we were away at a camp for 2 weeks, and I called and said, are you cutting the grass? Yeah, I'm doing it now. And I got home, he hadn't cut the grass for 2 weeks, but what he carved in the front lawn was his name, Dave. He said, that took longer than cutting the grass. I said, what is wrong with you? So I get home that morning, he had cut the grass, and I had gotten up and done all the quiet stuff, like I weeded the flower bed. And we drove up, and there he was with a garbage bag half full of something, and he was weeding the flower bed. Now you have to realize, my son didn't know the difference between a dandelion and a rose. And I said, oh, good grief. And Carol says, golden moment. Look for the golden moment. And so all of a sudden the picture changed. I saw my son give me a love gift. I didn't ask him to weed the flower bed, but he gave me a love gift. And I went up and I said, what are you doing? I'm weeding the flower bed. I said, I've already done it. He said, Dad, every time I pulled something out, I said, I hope you're a weed and not a flower. He pulled up all the perennials. We took them out. Everybody likes to be aired out once in a while, eh? So we replanted them. What I'm saying here is a lot of times we become so preoccupied with trying to make the circumstances and wishing that the circumstances of our lives were different that we fail to recognize the golden moments right now. In the book One Crowded Hour, there's a story told about the Gurkhas of Nepal. Now, they're a mighty fighting force, and they were hired by the British to go in to do this battle for them. And they said, now, when they talked to their commander, they said, you know what? It'll involve jumping out of an airplane. They said, well, I'll have to speak to my men about that. So he came back and he said, we'll do it under 3 conditions. He wanted to define the circumstances, and they had to be perfect. He said the plane must slow down when the men jump out. He said it always slows down. He said they can't jump out onto rocky soil. He said that's fine, they're going to be jumping into a jungle. And he said the plane can't be more than 100 feet above the ground. They said, well, that's impossible. He said, why is that impossible? He said there won't be time for the parachutes to open. He looked and said, we get parachutes? You know, so many times in our lives we don't realize that we have a parachute. In those rough times and when the circumstances aren't as great or they're not as perfect as we want them to be, we have a parachute that always opens. Jesus said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. He said, I will supply all your needs. you see, and that we can do all things through him who gives us strength. We're not abandoned in this journey called living. He wants to be with us. He wants to be yoked together with us. He will give us the strength. He gives us purpose. He did it for Dorothea. She lived that kind of a life. And even in her health challenges, she always had that sense of victory in her life. Look for the golden moments, because all of a sudden, life has passed you by. And you've spent most of your time wishing that life was different. Value and live in the moment. We have this moment to hold in our hands. Sifts through our fingers, you know. Yesterday's gone. We can't do anything about that. Tomorrow may never come, but we have this moment today. Appreciate. Value. Value the people that you love. Don't neglect to tell them that you appreciate them. Just like when Mr. Reist said how she made him feel valued. We all have that ability to be able to create golden moments for other people in our lives. So the parachute will always open. And I recognize that, you know, Jesus has to say to me lots of times, just like he said to the storm, calm down and cheer up. He has to say that to me sometimes. Calm down and cheer up, Blaine. There's a golden moment here. Just start looking for it. And you know what? It changes your perspective, and it changes your day. Well, when we look for golden moments, we leave people better off than we found them. You know? Can that be your motto? Can that be the desire of your life? I'm going to endeavor to leave people better off than I found them. If you think of something good to say, you're looking at someone, you say, man, they've got nice teeth. And you say, you got beautiful teeth. Did you wear braces? Thank your parents every day. Right? And you leave them thinking, you know what? I do have nice teeth. Right? Or, like your shoes. Hey, I like my shoes. Just those little simple things in life. If you think something positive about someone and it's going to make their day brighter, then make their day brighter. Look for the golden moments. Not only look for them, but create them in the way you live. You know, Dorothea lived in the moment. And when I think of the fruit of the Spirit, I think God blessed her. He lived within her. She had love, she had joy, and she had peace. And you know, she projected that onto others with her patience, her goodness, and her kindness. And in doing that, she experienced her own gentleness. She was faithfulness and self-control. Her life left people better off than she found them. If I can leave behind me here and there a friend or two to say when I am gone that I had helped to make their pathway fair, had brought them smiles when they were bowed with care, the riches of this world I'll carry on. If only 3 or 4 shall pause to say when I have passed beyond this earthly sphere, that I brought gladness to them on a day when bitterness was theirs, I'll take away more riches than a billionaire leaves here. Times of mourning remind us that some things are worth mourning. Death, as nothing else, helps us realize what is ultimately valuable. Death reminds us once again of the limitations of time. And because God leaves us with much that is still ours, even when we lose someone we love, it's called memories. I leave this proverb with you today. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. We can't always understand what's happening in our lives and why the circumstances are the way they are, the detours we find ourselves on. But lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and the promise is that he will make your path straight. The Lord bless you, and now we will have a piano and cello